Welcome back to the deep end, everyone. I hope you're somewhere comfortable. Maybe dim the lights a bit, grab a blanket, pour yourself something soothing.
Yeah.
We are going for a very distinct late night vibe today because the material we are unpacking, well, let's just say it's best served chilled.
It certainly is. I mean, it's dense, it's psychologically complex, and it really deals with the uh, the very architecture of who we are.
Yeah.
We aren't just looking at psychology today. We're looking at the geology of the soul.
The geology of the soul, I love that. But before we slip into this stream of consciousness, we have to handle the housekeeping, a mandatory disclaimer for everyone listening.
Right.
This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We're here to learn, to explore, and, to question the nature of reality, not to sell you a dogma.
Exactly. And today, our map for this exploration is specifically session 88 of the early sessions, book 3 of the Seth Material.
Just saying session 88, it sounds a bit mysterious, doesn't it? Like a restricted file in some Cold War archive. Let's set the scene for you.
Please.
We're traveling back in time to September 16th, 1964. It's a Wednesday night, 9:00 p.m.
And the context here is actually really relatable, which I think is,
Yeah.
it's so important to ground us before things get weird.
Yes.
Often when people approach the Seth Material, they expect this booming mountaintop delivery from on high.
Yeah.
But here, Jane Roberts, who speaks for the personality essence known as Seth, was absolutely exhausted.
The notes on this are just great. She had no idea what the session was going to be about. She was physically tired, and the notes actually say she was, and I quote, secretly hoping for a short session.
Which is just so human.
So human. She didn't want to disappoint her husband, Robert Butts, who, transcribed all these sessions by hand in shorthand, but she really just wanted to go to bed.
And yet that friction,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's part of the validation of the material, isn't it? Well, she's exhausted. Her conscious mind is checking out. And yet she delivers this high-energy, fast-paced transmission that covers everything from the structure of the subconscious to the nature of time itself.
Right. It's a testament to the separation between Jane's physical state and the energy of the material coming through. If she were just making this up, you'd expect a tired, low-effort story. Instead, we get a masterclass in psychology that, it rivals anything Freud or Jung ever wrote.
Exactly. It's consistent, it's highly structured, and incredibly energetic, despite the fact that the vessel is, low on battery.
So here is the hook for today's deep dive. I want you to imagine your mind, your subconscious, not as a messy attic where you store old phone numbers and embarrassing memories from third grade.
That's the standard model, yeah.
That's the model we're all used to.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine it instead as an archaeological big site.
And that is the central metaphor Seth uses in this session. And it changes everything. It changes everything about how we view ourselves. We aren't just looking at a flat plane of thoughts. We are standing on top of fossilized layers of past lives, ancient history, and buried civilizations of the self.
And we are going to dig through every single layer. We're going to get our hands dirty.
Shall we start at the surface?
Let's hit the topsoil. This session actually kicks off with some pretty practical advice. Seth is talking to Robert, he calls him Joseph, about keeping a dream notebook.
Right.
Now, usually when people talk about dreams in this kind of mystical context, they expect everything to be a prophecy. I dreamt of a black cat, so the stock market will crash on Tuesday.
Of course. But Seth shuts that down pretty quickly. He says, all dreams are not clairvoyant. He's surprisingly pragmatic about the mechanics of dreaming.
He is.
He explains that the subconscious has different levels or depths. As data comes up from the deeper self, it has to pass through these levels to reach your waking mind.
So it's like a filter system.
More like a game of telephone, I think. Or maybe a series of translators who all speak slightly different dialects. Seth says these levels, and this is a great quote, he says they translate, symbolize, and often distort valid data.
Distort.
So by the time you wake up and remember the dream, it's been colored by your current emotions, your fears, all the trivia of your daily life.
So the dream contains valid data, maybe even clairvoyant data, but it's wearing a costume. It's disguised as your high school algebra teacher or that weird house you lived in 10 years ago.
Precisely. The data is real, but the clothing is symbolic. And this leads us to one of the most interesting psychological tweaks Seth offers in this session. He talks about the theory of associations.
Okay, let's break this down. Because standard psychology relies so heavily on association.
Right.
You see a red ball, you feel happy because you had a red ball when you were 5. It's cause and effect within one lifetime.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the linear view. Seth says that's true, but it's incomplete. It's like looking at a 2D map of a 3D world. He says standard psychology misses the self-unifying associations.
Self-unifying. Okay. That implies bringing different parts together. What is being unified here?
Across time. Seth claims that in the deep levels of your subconscious, there are associations that spring not from your childhood, but from your latent knowledge and experience of past lives.
This is fascinating. So if I have an irrational love for, I don't know, the smell of sawdust and tar, standard psychology would tear apart my childhood looking for a woodworking uncle.
Exactly.
But Seth is saying it might not be from this life at all.
Right. It might be because you were a shipbuilder in the 1700s.
Yeah.
The smell triggers a self-unifying association. It bridges the gap between your current ego and that past identity. It unifies the you of then with the you of now.
That completely changes how we look at our quirks, our phobias, our sudden interests. It's not just random firing of neurons.
It does. These associations act as a sort of psychic glue. They provide a sense of psychic continuity across your various existences. He calls us a living archaeological heritage.
Oh, I love that phrase. Living archaeological heritage. It makes you feel less like a person struggling to get through the week and more like a walking museum of consciousness.
It really elevates the concept of the self.
Yeah.
And Seth makes a crucial distinction here regarding who holds the keys to this museum.
Okay.
The ego, you that is listening to this right now, checking your email, driving the car, usually isn't aware of that connection.
Yeah.
The ego is focused on physical survival in this time.
Right. The ego has bills to pay. It doesn't have time to worry about being a shipbuilder.
Exactly. But the inner ego, the part of you that dreams, can see the whole picture. Seth says the inner ego is the I who experiences when the ego I sleeps. You can look down 2 lives back and look up at the present.
So it's like the inner ego has the master key to the archives, while the conscious ego is just the security guard stuck at the front desk watching the monitors.
That's a very, very apt analogy. The security guard thinks the lobby is the whole building.
Yeah.
The inner ego knows about the basement and the penthouse.
So we've looked at the surface, the dreams, the associations, the way the lobby is decorated now. Grab your shovels. We are going down into the dirt.
This is where Seth really leans into that fossil analogy.
He does.
He describes the mind as having layers. Just like the physical earth has rock strata. And just like an archaeologist can read history in the dirt, we can read our soul's history in these layers.
Let's talk about layer 1, the topsoil.
This represents the personal present subconscious. Using that earth analogy, Seth compares this to the soil dealing with the present seasons.
I really liked the imagery he used here. It felt very poetic for a, disembodied entity.
It did.
He says this layer holds the roots of living emotions and desires, but then he drops this line. The loose, dry autumn leaves still contain traces of earlier pigment.
It's poetic, but it's also highly technical. He's saying that even your immediate surface-level desires have deeper roots reaching backward to your birth. It's the layer of just under the surface needs.
Right.
The autumn leaves are memories or feelings that are fading, falling off the tree of the present moment. But they still have color. They still affect the chemical makeup of the soil.
So this is the stuff we can almost touch. If you sit quietly for 5 minutes, you can access this layer. It's your mood, your hunger, that argument you had yesterday.
Exactly. It's accessible.
Yeah.
But then we hit the shovel against something harder, layer 2.
Layer 2. This is where the vibe shifts.
This is what we might call the zone of fear.
Ominous.
It is a bit. This layer contains the elements deeply feared for personal reasons. These are the things the ego has decided are unsafe to look at. Repressed traumas, unacceptable desires, the shadow self.
And Seth describes a phenomenon here that I think everyone has felt at some point in their life, even if they didn't have a name for it. He calls it a psychic earthquake.
A psychic earthquake. It's such a visceral term.
It really is. What exactly triggers one? Is this like a nervous breakdown?
In a clinical sense, we might call it a breakdown or an acute crisis. Yeah. But structurally, Seth explains it as the moment when this second layer, the fear layer, gets disturbed.
Right.
The pressure builds up, the tectonic plates of the psyche shift, and it shatters the seemingly solid surface of the ego.
That feeling when your reality just cracks open. Maybe you lose a job or a relationship ends or you just wake up one day and the world looks different. The security guard in the lobby loses control.
Exactly. The illusion of stability is broken. And while that sounds terrifying, and it feels terrifying when you're in it, Seth implies it's a necessary part of the excavation. Because when that crack opens, when the earthquake happens, we find what's hidden in layer 3.
Layer 3. Barren possibilities and secondary personalities. This part was wild. It felt like we stepped out of psychology and into a sci-fi novel.
It's certainly one of the more esoteric concepts. This is the layer of what could have been. Possibilities that, as Seth puts it, were not sufficiently strong to send up seeds to bloom in the sun of the conscious ego.
The ghosts of our unlived lives. The versions of us that didn't make the cut.
And sometimes these unlived parts don't just fade away, they coalesce. They form secondary personalities.
Whoa.
Seth uses a very intense image here. He says they rise like lava during a psychic earthquake.
So let's clarify this. A secondary personality isn't just a random voice in your head. It's made of debris.
Often, yes. It brings up debris from other levels. Buried fears, unexpressed drives, they personify themselves in the guise of those fears.
So it's like...
Imagine all your self-doubt and repressed anger gathering together and putting on a mask. That's a secondary personality rising from the lava.
No, this is where the session gets really meta and honestly pretty funny.
It does.
Because Seth, this distinct personality speaking through, Jane realizes what he sounds like. He's talking about secondary personalities, voices that take over, and he knows that Robert and Jane are probably sitting there thinking, wait a minute, are you a secondary personality?
Right. He anticipates the skepticism perfectly, and he defends himself with quite a bit of sass. The notes say Jane actually smiled and put her foot up on a chair during this part, acting very amused.
It was his personality.
It was Seth's personality coming through her physicality.
He says, I do not represent such a secondary personality. However, I have included this material for your edification when you suppose that I am.
It's such a great line. It's like, I'm teaching you about this so you know I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
But his argument is actually very logical. He says, look at the evidence. Secondary personalities are usually composed of fear patterns and repressed debris. They are chaotic. They try to take over the host's life because they are starving for existence. They don't care about the host's identity.
And Seth points out that he has always been concerned with Jane's identity. He calls her Rupert. He says if he were a secondary personality, the fear patterns of which I would have been composed would have long ago asserted themselves.
Basically, if I were a monster from her subconscious, I would have acted like one by now. Plus, he argues that secondary personalities rarely provide intrinsically valuable information. They're usually emotional storms.
And he's a teacher.
Seth, on the other hand, provides structured, philosophical, and practical data. He's a teacher, not a tantrum.
However, he does throw a bone to the concept. He mentions that not all secondary personalities are demons rising from the lava. Sometimes a benevolent one can emerge.
Yes, this is the safety valve concept. If the ego is too rigid and ignores a huge part of the self, the subconscious might create a personality to handle it.
Oh, interesting.
For example, if you were a very rigid logical accountant who secretly wanted to paint but never let yourself, you might develop a painter personality just to let that creative energy out before you explode.
So it's a coping mechanism.
Exactly. But Seth is making it crystal clear. He isn't a coping mechanism. He's an independent teacher, observing the dig site from the outside.
Okay, so we've dug through the personal stuff, the fears, the lava, the unlived lives. Now we are getting into the really deep stuff. We are going past the current life entirely.
This is segment 3 of our dig, the undifferentiated layers and the dead.
Seth talks about an undifferentiated layer that exists between lives. This term undifferentiated always trips people up. What are we looking at here?
Think of it as the backstage area of reality. The camouflage existences are the plays we perform, our physical lives on Earth.
Okay.
The undifferentiated layer is the gap between the plays. It's a layer of pure reality stripped of the physical disguise. It's where the actors go when they aren't playing a role.
And this is where he explains how communication with the dead actually works. It's not like a ghost takes a bus to your house and knocks on the door.
No. Spatial travel has nothing to do with it. It's entirely about focus. Seth says, it is theoretically possible to change the focus. If you can shift your consciousness to this specific undifferentiated level, tune your radio dial to that frequency, you can communicate with personality essences that are no longer physical.
He gets into the mechanics of this too, which I appreciate. He talks about chemistry versus focus. Apparently, strong emotions can cause chemical changes in the body that accidentally open this door.
This is a crucial distinction he makes. Seth admits that emotional outbursts or reactions do cause chemical conditions. When you are in a state of high grief or hysteria, your body chemistry changes. And that can sometimes slip the lock on the subconscious.
Right, you might see something.
You might see or hear something from that other layer, but he corrects a common misconception here.
Which is?
He says, it is a fact that as a rule, the communications cause the chemical reactions rather than the other way around.
Wait, explain that.
So often people think, I was hysterical, so I hallucinated a ghost. Seth is saying, no, you made contact on the subconscious level, and that contact was so intense, it caused a chemical reaction in your body, which you then interpreted as emotion.
That completely flips the script. The contact happens first, underneath the radar.
Right. And because we are subconscious creatures, we are conditioned to expect these communications when those chemical changes happen. But the real key is controlled focus-like hypnosis, or trance, not just waiting for an emotional breakdown.
You want to open the door with a key, not kick it down in a panic.
Exactly.
Speaking of controlled focus, we have to talk about Jane. Seth does a bit of a psychoanalysis of Jane or Rupert in this session, and it is fascinatingly specific. It feels like we're reading her private medical chart.
It is very personal. He explains that Jane has a natural ability to shift her focus, like changing radio stations. She doesn't just stick to the top 40 of physical reality.
No.
She can tune into the static, the deep waves, the foreign signals, instinctively.
But he mentions there was a danger in this. A serious one. Seth says that if Jane hadn't found creative writing, she might have shattered.
This is the stone image concept. He explains that due to her mother's difficult, perhaps overpowering personality, Jane built up rigid defenses as a child, a stone-like ego to protect herself. She had to be tough to survive.
We've all done that, put up walls to keep the herd out.
Exactly. But for someone with Jane's immense creative and psychic energy, walls are dangerous. Energy needs to move. If you bottle up high pressure inside a stone container, eventually it explodes.
Wow.
Seth says her creative nature would have eventually shattered the stone image disastrously.
So writing wasn't just a hobby for her. It was a pressure release valve.
It was survival. Writing gave her a safe outlet for that energy, keeping her flexible. It allowed the stone to become porous, letting the energy seep out safely instead of blowing up.
And he also credits Robert.
Huge credit to Robert. Seth calls him a complete psychic and sexual partner. He grounded her. Without that partnership, without someone to hold the kite string while she flew into these other dimensions, her abilities might have fragmented her personality.
It's a beautiful acknowledgement of their relationship. It's not just husband and wife. It's a psychic circuit that keeps them both safe. It really underscores that this isn't a solo journey.
Absolutely. We need anchors if we're going to explore the deep ocean.
All right, we are nearing the bottom of the dig. We've gone through personal fears, past secondary personalities, the gap between lives. What is at the bedrock? If we dig all the way down, what do we find?
The deepest layers of the subconscious, according to Seth. Below the undifferentiated layer, we find past life memories, layers dealing specifically with previous incarnations.
And below that?
Racial heritage, the layer containing the dim first materialization of man. This is the collective memory of the species.
And below that, the absolute bottom.
Pre-matter reality, a heritage dealing with the comprehension of reality before physical evolution. We are talking about the moment consciousness decided to become matter.
That's heavy. We are carrying around the memory of the Big Bang of consciousness in our own heads.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Every single person has this access code written in their deepest foundation.
But wait, here's where it gets really interesting. The ultimate twist. Seth has spent this entire session, almost an hour of dictation, pages of notes, building this elaborate archaeological metaphor.
He has.
Layers, fossils, topsoil, bedrock. He's built a vertical map. And then right at the end, what does he do?
He pulls the rug out from under us.
He says, these so-called layers are not really layers at all.
But part of the spacious present.
I love that term, the spacious present.
It's a complete mind bender. He reveals that the concept of layers is just a teaching tool, a scaffold for our limited conscious minds. We think in time. We think before and after, deep and shallow. So he uses that language.
But in reality,
he says time is simultaneous.
So all those past lives, the ancient racial memories, the future possibilities, they aren't buried under us. They're happening next to us.
Exactly. They are all happening right now in the spacious present. We aren't digging down into the past. We are just widening our focus in the now.
That changes the whole fossil analogy. The fossils aren't dead rock.
No. The fossils are alive. They are breathing, acting, and living alongside us in a different dimension of the now. We just perceive them as past because our ego is wearing blinders.
That is tough to wrap your head around. It means the shipbuilder I was in the 1700s is building that ship right now.
And your future self is listening to this very conversation right now. It's all one giant event.
And Seth drops a little humor in there too while destroying our concept of time. He quotes the Bible, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's," to explain why Jane's ego should focus on the physical world.
He does. He basically says, let the ego deal with the bills and the physical time. That's its job. But then he adds, just a little smugly, you see, I am better acquainted with biblical phrases than either of you.
I love a disembodied entity with a sense of intellectual superiority.
It adds to the charm.
Yeah.
It reminds us that Seth isn't a robot. He's a personality with a wit.
And before he signs off, he does a quick health check. Robert apparently has hay fever during this session.
Yes, and Seth reassures them. He says despite the hay fever, their vital psychic reserves are excellent. It reinforces that chill, caring vibe we talked about at the start.
Right.
He's blowing their minds with the nature of reality, but he also cares that Robert is sneezing. He's looking out for their physical vessels.
So what does this all mean? We've journeyed from a dream notebook all the way to the realization that time is an illusion.
It means that you are so much more than you think you are. You aren't just a person living a linear life from birth to death. You are a multidimensional entity.
Right.
Your fears, your dreams, your sudden urges, they are data points from a vast, simultaneous existence.
And those layers of the subconscious, the fear, the lava, the autumn leaves, they are all accessible if we learn how to shift our focus. We don't have to be victims of our archaeology. We can be the archaeologists.
And critically, it teaches us not to be afraid of the earthquakes. When the surface cracks, it's not the end. It's an opening. It's a chance to integrate parts of yourself that have been buried. The earthquake is how the light gets in.
That is a powerful takeaway. The earthquake is an invitation.
Precisely.
Now, here's a thought I want to leave you with. A little homework for the imagination. If Seth is right, and the past is actually happening right now in the spacious present, that means you are currently a past life for a future version of yourself.
That's a dizzying thought.
Right. So what are you doing right now? What fears are you burying? What passions are you ignoring that are going to become the fossilized layers for your future self? What lava are you creating for them to deal with?
Or conversely, what self-unifying associations are you creating that will give them strength?
Exactly. Are you being a good ancestor to your own soul right now?
That is the question.
If you want to dig deeper into this, and believe me, we only scratched the surface of the surface, you need to go to the source. We strongly encourage you to study the Seth Material books directly. Don't just take our word for it.
You can find them and support the publishers at the New Awareness Network by visiting sethcenter.com. Specifically, look for the early sessions. It's raw, it's detailed, and it's unlike anything else you'll ever read.
We want to give full credit to the Seth Material and the New Awareness Network for preserving these sessions. It's an incredible archive of consciousness. Visit sethcenter.com/the early sessions to fill your cart.
It's worth the read.
Well, I'm going to go check my own fossil layers before bed. Maybe see if I can find where my fear of spiders actually comes from. Maybe I was a fly in a past life.
Or maybe you just need to clean your attic.
Touché! Good night, everyone. Keep digging.